The day my parents dragged me into court over a house I bought with my own money, my mother leaned across the wooden bench and said, without blinking, "That house belongs to your sister." I remember the sound of those words more than their meaning, how they echoed against marble walls, how a stranger in a black robe nodded as if that sentence made sense. I stood there frozen, fingers clenched around a folder thick with bank statements, contracts, proof of every sleepless night I'd worked for that home. And yet, somehow, I was the thief. My name is Adam. I'm the older sibling, the reliable one. The one who paid his own tuition, sent money home when Dad's business failed, and never once asked for anything back. My sister, Lily, is the golden child. Always has been. She's younger, louder, and permanently convinced the world owes her something. Especially what belongs to me. Growing up, the rules were simple. If Lily wanted it, Lily got it. If I protested, I was selfish. When she crashed Dad's car, I paid the repair bill. When she dropped out of college, I was told to be understanding. And when I finally bought my first house, a modest 2-bedroom place on a quiet street, I made the mistake of telling my parents. At first, they smiled. Too quickly. My father asked how much it cost. My mother wanted to see photos. Lily just stared at me, lips pressed together, calculating. I should have noticed it then, the way her eyes traced the pictures, like she was mentally rearranging the furniture. Like she already lived there. 2 weeks later, my parents invited me to dinner. No celebration. No congratulations. Just tense silence and overcooked food. Halfway through the meal, my mother cleared her throat and said, "So, when is Lily moving in?" I laughed. I actually laughed. I told them Lily had her own apartment. That I'd bought the house for myself. That's when my father's face hardened. "You're the eldest," he said. "You should think of family first." Lily didn't even pretend. She smiled and said, "It's only fair. You don't need all that space anyway." I refused. Politely at first. Then firmly. That's when the phone calls started. The guilt. The accusations. My parents claimed I'd used family money. Money I'd never seen. Money that apparently transformed, overnight, into legal ammunition. The court summons arrived on a Tuesday morning. As I sat in that courtroom, listening to my parents argue that my house was rightfully my sister's, I realized something chilling. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't entitlement gone too far. It was planned. And as Lily finally turned to look at me, smiling like she'd already won, I understood this wasn't just about a house. It was about erasing me. After the court hearing, I didn't go home. I sat in my car in the parking garage, hands on the steering wheel, replaying every moment of the last few months like a broken security feed. The truth was uncomfortable, but the red flags hadn't appeared overnight. I'd ignored them, because it was easier to believe my family wouldn't turn on me. The first sign came the week I bought the house. I'd called my mother, excited, nervous, proud. Instead of congratulations, she asked one question: "Did you tell Lily yet?" Not "How does it feel?" Not "Are you happy?" Just "Lily." When I said no, there was a pause, too long, and then she said, "You should." She hates surprises. That should have warned me. A few days later, Lily started calling. Casual at first. She asked about the neighborhood, parking, whether the guest room could fit a bed. I corrected her, there was no guest room. She laughed and said, "For now." Then the secret calls began. Whenever I visited my parents, conversations stopped when I entered the room. My father would step outside to take calls. My mother suddenly guarded her phone like it contained state secrets. Once, I overheard my name through the wall, followed by the words documents, and don't tell him yet. When I asked, my mother said I was imagining things. You're too sensitive lately, she told me. Lily, meanwhile, changed. She stopped asking and started assuming. She told relatives she was moving soon. She asked my aunt if she still had boxes from her last move. When I confronted her, she rolled her eyes. Relax. Mom said it's basically settled. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Mom said. I called my parents that night. My father sounded irritated, like I was interrupting something important. My mother insisted Lily was joking. Why are you always creating drama? She asked. Somehow, I was apologizing by the end of the call. The money questions came next. My parents suddenly wanted details, how I paid for the down payment, which bank I used, who helped me. My father claimed he'd loaned me money years ago. Money I never received. When I asked for proof, he said, family doesn't keep receipts. But they did. Just not for me. One evening, I noticed a thin folder on the kitchen table during a visit. My name was typed on the tab. When I reached for it, my mother snapped, "Don't touch that." Her voice was sharp, almost scared. That night, I barely slept. I started doubting myself. Maybe I'd missed something. Maybe they really believed their version. But deep down, another feeling crept in, heavier than confusion. Preparation. They weren't arguing anymore. They were organizing. And I was the only one who hadn't been invited to the plan. The truth didn't come from my parents. It came from my uncle, the one relative who still spoke to me like a human being. He called late at night, his voice low and uneasy. "Adam," he said, "I don't think you should hear this from anyone else." I already knew something was wrong. My chest felt tight before he even continued. He told me my parents had been meeting with a lawyer weeks before I bought the house. Not after. Before. They'd asked about family assets, about whether adult children could claim property bought during a certain time frame. Most importantly, they'd asked whether a house purchased by one sibling could be legally transferred, or challenged, for the benefit of another. "For Lily," my uncle said quietly. I felt the air leave my lungs. According to him, my parents believed the house should belong to my sister, because I was financially stable, and she needed a fresh start. They'd planned to argue that family money, future inheritance, emotional support, even old living expenses, gave them moral and legal leverage. The lawsuit wasn't spontaneous outrage. It was strategy. When I confronted my parents, they didn't deny it. We sat in their living room, the same one where I'd handed them my first paycheck years ago. My father didn't look at me. My mother folded her hands like she was at church. "We raised you," she said calmly. "Everything you have is because of us." I asked why they never told me. Why they waited until after I'd signed papers, taken on debt, committed my future. My mother's answer still haunts me. "If we'd told you," she said, "you would have said no." Lily finally spoke then. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, not even pretending to feel guilty. "You always get the good stuff," she said. "It's my turn." Something cracked inside me. This wasn't about need. Lily had options. Friends. A job she quit because it bored her. This was entitlement dressed up as fairness. And my parents were willing to burn me to keep her warm. I asked them if they understood what they were doing, suing their own son, lying under oath, trying to take something I earned. Indifference. My father muttered something about sacrifice. My mother said, "You'll survive." Lily won't. That's when the rage hit. Hot, shaking, uncontrollable. I stood up so fast the chair tipped over. For a moment, I thought I might scream. Or cry. Or beg. Instead, I left. I drove aimlessly for hours, the lawsuit papers on the passenger seat like a loaded weapon. Every mile felt like distance from the person I thought my family was. But beneath the heartbreak, something else started to form. Clarity. They thought I was trapped, emotionally, legally, morally. They thought I'd cave, hand over the keys, apologize for existing. What they didn't know was that they'd underestimated me in one crucial way. I wasn't just their son anymore. I was their opponent. And I was done playing fair. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the lawsuit, not because of Lily, not because of my parents' cold indifference, but because of the voice inside me that refused to break. I parked near the small lake outside the city, windows down, the December wind cutting through the silence. I stared at my reflection in the dark water and saw a version of myself I didn't recognize, defeated, betrayed, powerless. But underneath it all, there was something else, a spark that had been smoldering all my life, ignored, dismissed, buried under years of being the responsible one. And then it hit me. Every time I'd given in to Lily, every time I'd swallowed my pride for my parents' peace, I hadn't been weak. I had been preparing for this. All those nights of extra shifts, all those savings carefully tucked away, every careful calculation I made while they flaunted favoritism, it wasn't just survival. It was armor. I thought of the first day I stepped into that house, key in hand, the smell of fresh paint and possibility filling the rooms. That wasn't just a house. That was my future, my independence, my proof that I could carve a life they didn't control. And now they wanted to take it away with legal threats and family guilt. I slammed my fists on the steering wheel. Rage mixed with grief, and suddenly the grief didn't matter anymore. Only one thought remained. I wouldn't let them win. The realization hit me fully. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their fairness. I didn't need their lies, or their lawsuits to define me. I only needed one thing, my own resolve. I picked up my phone and drafted a plan. Lawyers, of course, but more than that. Evidence. Documentation. Witnesses. Everything that could prove that the house was mine, legally and morally. And I would not stop there. I'd protect every hard-earned cent, every corner of my life they thought they could claim. Then, something unexpected happened. My anger began to sharpen into clarity. I saw my parents' and Lily's moves in the courtroom like a chess game. They were predictable, arrogant, relying on me to crumble. But I wouldn't. I could anticipate them, counter them, and turn their own strategies against them. By sunrise, I had made a promise to myself. I wouldn't just defend my house. I would reclaim my dignity, my self-respect, and every ounce of trust they had shattered. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt powerful. Not the smug, fleeting power of having money or status, but the deep, unshakable power of someone who has been wronged and refuses to be erased. And as I watched the morning light reflect off the lake, I knew one thing for certain. This fight wouldn't be easy. They were my family. But for the first time, that didn't matter. I wasn't their obedient son anymore. I was a force they had awakened. And they had no idea what was coming next. I spent the next week like a man possessed. Every day, I dissected the situation, mapped out my parents' lies, and traced Lily's entitlement to its source. The first step was gathering proof. I dug through my bank statements, emails, and contracts. I made a meticulous timeline showing that every penny for the house came from my salary, saved over years of late nights and sacrifices. Every mortgage payment was documented, every renovation expense logged. Next, I needed witnesses. I reached out to neighbors, the realtor, and even the contractors who had worked on the house. Every single one of them confirmed what I already knew: this house was mine, legally and morally. But I didn't stop there. I began recording conversations with Lily, casually asking her about the house, letting her slip words that could later be twisted into admissions. I didn't let her see the cameras. I didn't let her know I was listening. Meanwhile, I created a dossier on my parents' secret dealings. Their lawyer consultations, the suspicious bank transfers, the family loans that never existed, all documented, all ready to be used. I even tracked the times they had coordinated with Lily behind my back, proving premeditation in the attempt to wrest the house from me. I wasn't reckless. I knew they were watching me, measuring every step, expecting me to crack. So, I played the part of the hurt, obedient son whenever they were around. I smiled through awkward dinners, pretended to negotiate calmly on the phone, nodded through their guilt trips. Behind the scenes, I was building a case so airtight it would leave them speechless. But I wanted more than just a legal victory. I wanted exposure. I wanted their hypocrisy laid bare for everyone, the extended family, friends, anyone who had ever been charmed by their perfection. I started preparing a series of letters, emails, and records that highlighted every manipulation, every favor granted to Lily at my expense. I didn't send them yet. Timing would be everything. And then came the trap. I made a subtle mistake in a conversation with Lily, one I could accidentally exaggerate. She bit instantly, bragging about how my parents were helping her claim the house, thinking I had no proof. That slip would become a key piece in the courtroom, a small, natural moment that exposed the conspiracy without me having to say much. All the while, my parents remained smug. They believed they had me cornered, counting on my moral obligation and family loyalty to force me into submission. I watched them, taking notes on their behaviors, their favorite lies, the ways they gaslighted me. Each detail sharpened my strategy, each misstep they made became ammunition for the final strike. By the end of the week, I had a complete roadmap. Every lie documented, every betrayal recorded, every chance to humiliate them lined up perfectly. And yet, the most important part of revenge isn't proof or strategy, it's patience. I reminded myself daily: strike too soon, and they'll recover. Strike too late, and the momentum could be lost. They thought they controlled the game. But in reality, I was already 3 moves ahead. And the moment of reckoning was approaching. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. My parents sat side by side, perfectly composed, wearing the masks of authority and righteousness. Lily perched next to them, her usual smirk barely concealed. They thought they had me trapped. They thought I was the nervous, obedient son who would fold under pressure. I walked in with my evidence folder, a compact arsenal of years of work, recordings, emails, receipts, and witness statements. As I set it on the table, the judge looked up, curious. The room fell silent. When my turn came to speak, I didn't just defend my house. I dismantled their entire narrative piece by piece. Your Honor, I began, this house was purchased with my own money, earned over years of work. Every transaction, every payment, is documented. And yet, my parents have filed this lawsuit claiming it belongs to my sister, based on false assumptions and premeditated deceit. I laid out the bank statements, then called the contractors to testify. Each confirmed my payments, my renovations, my ownership. Next, I played recordings of Lily and my parents discussing ways to claim the house, her admissions slipping naturally into the evidence. The room shifted. My parents' smug expressions faltered. Lily's jaw tightened. Then came the crescendo. I revealed the timeline showing my parents' secret consultations with a lawyer before I even bought the house, proof of their premeditated plan to steal what was mine. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Your Honor, I said, holding up emails and bank transfers, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is an attempt to manipulate the legal system and destroy my independence, all for my sister's benefit and their own misplaced sense of control. By now, my parents were pale, sweat glistening on their foreheads. Lily shifted uncomfortably, no longer the confident golden child. My uncle's warnings had been accurate, they had underestimated me. When the judge reviewed the evidence, he slammed his gavel. This court finds in favor of Adam. The house legally belongs to him. Further, the attempts by the plaintiffs to claim ownership without just cause will be considered for sanctions. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, stifled laughter. My parents' faces were ashen. Lily's smirk had vanished completely. But I wasn't finished. I asked the judge's permission to submit a record of their manipulations to the family attorney, ensuring they could never use deception like this again. The judge agreed. Every lie, every secret call, every false claim was now a matter of public record. As we left the courthouse, the air was electric. Family members who had been quiet observers now looked at my parents with suspicion and disbelief. Lily didn't say a word. My parents didn't speak. Their attempts to control, manipulate, and cheat had collapsed spectacularly, legally, socially, and emotionally. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. Not just from winning the house, but from reclaiming my life from people who had tried to erase me. The betrayal had been brutal, calculated, and deeply personal, but justice had been served, perfectly tailored to the crime. And as I walked past them, the victorious silence spoke louder than any words ever could. The weeks after the trial were surreal. My parents retreated into their own embarrassment, avoiding phone calls and family gatherings alike. Neighbors who once fawned over Lily now whispered behind their curtains, questioning the fairness of their so-called golden child. Lily herself barely looked at me, her confidence shattered, replaced by a rare, uncomfortable humility. The smug little world they had built around entitlement and manipulation crumbled faster than any of them could process. I, on the other hand, was finally free. Free to live in my home without fear, guilt, or the constant shadow of their control. Every wall, every corner of that house, now echoed with the hard-earned truth that it was mine. Not just legally, but morally and emotionally. I'd fought not just for property, but for recognition of my own worth, and the victory was sweeter than I'd ever imagined. Family members slowly began reaching out, curious and cautious. Some apologized, others stayed silent, still stunned by the exposure. I didn't need everyone's approval. What mattered was that the cycle of favoritism and deceit had ended. And me. I finally felt like the person I was always meant to be, strong, independent, and untouchable when it came to my own life. I even started documenting the journey, not for revenge, but for clarity. To remind myself, and anyone else, how easily betrayal can hide behind smiles, how often love and manipulation intertwine in the most painful ways. And as I shared my story with friends, colleagues, and even a few distant relatives, I realized something: truth has a weight that no lie can match. Sometimes, justice doesn't come quietly. Sometimes, it arrives like a storm, dismantling carefully constructed illusions. And for my family, that storm had left nothing but truth and consequence in its wake. My parents' attempts to erase me, to gift my hard work to Lily, had backfired spectacularly. The very tools they used, deception, secrecy, favoritism, had become their undoing. As I sat in my living room, sipping coffee, and staring at the morning sunlight spilling across my floors, I felt a shiver of satisfaction. Not cruel satisfaction, but the deep, resonant kind that comes from surviving betrayal and emerging stronger. So, To anyone watching this story, I ask, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you had to fight not just for what's yours, but for the respect you deserve? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your stories. And if you want more real-life tales of betrayal, revenge, and triumph, don't forget to subscribe. Remember this: those who try to take what's yours often reveal their true selves in the process, and in doing so, they hand you the power to rise above them. Justice isn't always quiet, but it's always unforgettable.